High in Indonesia's misty mountains, Wairebo survives, where steep terrain and isolation make everyday life extraordinarily challenging for its residents today.
Far north in Norway, Longyearbyen faces extreme Arctic conditions, where freezing temperatures and isolation shape nearly every aspect of life. Perched above a dramatic volcanic cliff, Castel Felipe de la Roca shows how communities can adapt to extraordinarily limited space.
On Lake Titicaca, families live on floating reed islands, transforming fragile natural materials into remarkable homes surrounded by endless water.
Yanjian is squeezed between mountains and river, creating one of China's narrowest urban landscapes, where every meter of land matters.
Beneath Australia's scorching desert, Kubapedi's residents escape extreme heat by creating homes and spaces deep underground for comfort. High above Greece's rugged landscape, Meteora's monasteries stand atop towering cliffs, creating an extraordinary world suspended between stone.
Deep inside Peru's Amazon, Iquitos stands isolated from highways, relying on rivers and air travel to connect with the outside world.
Built against a sheer mountain cliff, China's Hanging Temple demonstrates remarkable ancient engineering in one of the world's most dramatic landscapes.
Inside a volcanic caldera, Aogashima's residents live surrounded by rugged terrain, proving human communities.
In Siberia, Oymyakon endures extraordinary cold, where frozen landscapes and isolation have shaped. Hidden within Morocco's Rif Mountains, Chefchaoun's blue streets climb rugged terrain, creating a remarkable settlement shaped by its dramatic surroundings. Beneath enormous cliffs, Setenil de las Bodegas built homes into natural rock, turning massive stone formations into shelter and architecture.
High in Peru's Andes, La Rinconada exists at extreme elevation, where thin air, freezing weather and rugged terrain challenge residents daily.
Built across Rio's steep hillsides, Rocinha shows how dense communities adapt creatively when geography leaves little room for traditional urban expansion. Hidden among Peru's enormous desert dunes, Huacachina survives around a tiny oasis, creating an unexpected community surrounded by endless sand. Surrounded by towering Norwegian mountains, Rjukan receives limited winter sunlight, inspiring residents to adapt creatively to their unusual environment. In Heathorn, canals replace many roads, creating a peaceful Dutch community where boats become an essential part of everyday transportation. Built into Iran's steep mountainside, Masula uses rooftops as pathways, creating a remarkable village where architecture follows the terrain. Built into Italy's rugged coastline, Manarola rises above the sea, where steep cliffs and limited space shape everyday community life. Above Greece's rugged valleys, Meteora's ancient monasteries remain dramatically perched on towering rocks.
Deep inside Arizona's Grand Canyon, Supai remains remarkably remote, surrounded by towering cliffs.
At Argentina's southern edge, Ushuaia sits between mountains and ocean, where remote geography creates a remarkable gateway to Patagonia. Yakutsk endures some of Earth's harshest winters, yet thousands of residents maintain modern city life across this frozen Siberian landscape.
On Iceland's exposed southern coast, Vik faces powerful Atlantic weather, volcanic landscapes, and ice.
On Greenland's remote coast, Kulusuk endures Arctic isolation, where rugged mountains, sea ice, and limited access shape everyday community life. Between an alpine lake and towering mountains, Hallstatt's compact settlement shows how communities adapt when geography leaves little room for expansion. Far across the Pacific, Pitcairn Island remains remarkably isolated, where rugged terrain and distance shape everyday life for its small community. Along China's harsh desert frontier, Minkin's communities survive through careful water management, agriculture, and nations. Among India's rainiest landscapes, Cherrapunji's communities adapt to relentless rainfall, steep terrain. Between towering mountains and a narrow bay, Kotor's historic community adapted to dramatic terrain while preserving its remarkable coastal character.
Surrounded by Peru's towering Andes, Huaraz balances urban life with extreme altitude, powerful mountains, and challenging highland conditions.
Janjaji's towering sandstone pillars create an extraordinary landscape, where misty forests and vertical cliffs.
Hidden among the Faroe Islands, Gasadur sits beneath towering cliffs, where isolation, weather, and rugged terrain shape community life. Carved into ancient volcanic rock, Kandovan's homes blend naturally with Iran's mountains, creating a remarkable settlement shaped by geology. Deep in Greenland's Arctic wilderness, Itoltormit remains isolated, where freezing conditions. Among Norway's dramatic fjords, Lofoten communities live between mountains and sea, adapting daily life to a rugged northern environment. Among Vietnam's misty highlands, Sapa's communities cultivate steep terraces, adapting agriculture and daily life to challenging mountain terrain. Within New Mexico's high desert, Taos Pueblo endures through centuries, preserving traditional adobe architecture against a rugged mountain environment. Measurements. On Greenland's rocky coast, Qaqortoq adapts to Arctic conditions, where colorful homes, rugged terrain,
Along Greece's volcanic cliffs, Santorini's villages cling to steep terrain, creating spectacular homes above the Aegean Sea and caldera.
Across Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, Chichen Itza reveals how ancient Maya builders created monumental architecture within a demanding tropical environment. Deep in Pakistan's Karakoram, Shimshal survives among towering peaks and glaciers, where isolation and high in Venezuela's mountains, Colonia Tovar thrives among misty forests, steep slopes, and winding roads far above the surrounding lowlands. At Earth's frozen southern extreme, researchers live and work in Antarctica, surrounded by endless ice.
Perched above a dramatic Spanish gorge, Ronda demonstrates how communities can flourish despite steep cliffs, rugged terrain, and challenging geography.
Built into France's limestone cliffs, Rocamadour rises above a deep canyon, showing how architecture can adapt to dramatic natural terrain. Deep within Morocco's Rif Mountains, Chefchaoun's compact streets and colorful homes reveal how communities adapt beautifully to steep terrain. Perched above Tunisia's Mediterranean coast, Sidi Bou Said combines steep terrain, narrow streets, and distinctive architecture shaped by its surroundings. Built from earth beside Morocco's desert landscape, Ait Ben Haddou demonstrates how traditional architecture can withstand heat, dryness, and isolation. Clinging to Italy's rugged Ligurian coast, Vernazza rises above the sea, where steep terrain shapes its compact village and harbor.
Lights. Above Santorini's volcanic caldera, Oya clings to steep cliffs, where compact homes and narrow pathways.
Beneath massive rock overhangs, Setenil de las Bodegas turns natural cliffs into shelter, creating a village shaped by extraordinary geology.
Fringes. Carved into Italy's limestone landscape, Matera's ancient homes reveal how generations adapted architecture.
Among Cappadocia's volcanic formations, Gureme's cave homes blend with the landscape, showing how people transformed unusual geology into shelter. Surrounded by rugged Spanish mountains, Albarracin rises above a narrow valley, where medieval architecture adapts naturally to steep and rocky terrain. High in Indonesia's mountains, Waya Rebo remains surrounded by mist and forest, where Yangon stretches tightly between mountains and river, creating a remarkable urban landscape where geography leaves almost no room for expansion. On Lake Titicaca, floating reed islands support communities, transforming natural materials into homes across one of South America's highest lakes. Perched on a dramatic volcanic cliff, Castellfollit de la Roca shows how communities adapted to extraordinary terrain and limited space. Longyearbyen sits deep in the Arctic, where frozen ground, long winters, and isolation create extraordinary challenges for everyday life.
Surrounded by Amazon rainforest, Iquitos remains disconnected from highways, relying heavily on rivers and air travel for outside connections.
Meteora's ancient monasteries rise above Greece on towering stone pillars, creating an extraordinary settlement shaped by height, isolation, and nature. Beneath Australia's scorching desert, Kuba Pedi residents created underground spaces that provide relief from the region's extreme daytime heat. Built against a sheer Chinese cliff, the Hanging Temple demonstrates remarkable engineering, suspended dramatically between rugged rock and open mountain air. Inside and side a volcanic caldera, Aogush's community lives on a remote Japanese island surrounded. In Yemen's desert valleys, ancient settlements rise from mud and stone, adapting architecture to intense heat. Bhutan's capital, Thimphu, stretches through a steep Himalayan valley, where mountains, rivers, and limited flat land shape urban development.
Mawsynram receives extraordinary rainfall, yet communities continue living among lush mountains.
Surrounded by Alaskan rainforest and ocean, Ketchikan faces heavy rainfall, rugged mountains, and challenging coastal weather throughout the year. On Greenland's eastern coast, Tasiilaq faces Arctic isolation, rugged mountains, sea ice, and changing weather while maintaining a resilient community. Beneath France's towering Alps, Chamonix thrives in a narrow valley where glaciers, mountains, and winter conditions shape daily life.
High in India's Himalayas, Leh survives in a dry, thin-air environment where altitude, mountains, and limited water shape daily life.
Along Iceland's Volcanic coastline, Arnarstapi faces powerful ocean weather, rugged cliffs and isolation while
Chefchaouen climbs Morocco's rugged reef mountains, where steep streets, compact homes, and natural surroundings create a distinctive mountain community.
Across Svalbard's frozen landscape, remote mining settlements reveal how people adapted industry and community life to extreme Arctic conditions. Rising from India's Thar Desert, Jaisalmer uses sandstone architecture to create shelter and shade within an intensely hot environment. Among Sri Lanka's lush mountains, Ella's communities live alongside tea plantations. Steep valleys
Oya rises above Santorini's volcanic caldera, where compact white homes follow steep cliffs and overlook the vast blue Aegean Sea.
Surrounded by France's rugged Alps, Chichilian remains a small mountain community where steep terrain and wilderness define everyday surroundings. High in Peru's Andes, La Rinconada faces extreme altitude and harsh conditions, where mining and survival shape everyday community life. On the Faroe Islands, Tórshavn balances coastal life with rugged mountains, strong winds, narrow valleys, and unpredictable northern weather.
In Siberia, Oymyakon endures some of Earth's coldest inhabited conditions, forcing residents to adapt daily life.
Ilulissat sits beside Greenland's immense icebergs, where Arctic waters, frozen landscapes, and Masulah climbs Iran's mountains in layers, with rooftops becoming pathways and steep terrain shaping the village's remarkable traditional architecture.
Ushuaia lies beside Patagonia's rugged mountains and cold waters, where southern isolation and dramatic weather shape life at the edge.
Bolivia's high Andes present thin air, rugged mountains, and severe exposure, requiring communities to adapt carefully to demanding environments. In Vietnam's highlands, terraced fields transform steep mountains into farmland. Lhasa stands high on the Tibetan plateau, where thin air, dry landscapes, and immense mountains influence architecture and everyday life. Jodhpur rises beside India's desert, where dense blue homes, sandstone walls, and traditional design help communities adapt to intense heat.
Hallstatt rests between an alpine lake and towering mountains, leaving little space while creating one of Austria's most dramatic settlements.
Across Morocco's Rif Mountains, remote communities adapt homes and agriculture to steep slopes, limited flat land, and changing seasonal conditions.
Hulusuk remains isolated on Greenland's rugged coast, where sea ice, mountains, and Arctic weather influence transportation and community life.
Manarola clings to Italy's rugged coastline, where colorful homes, vineyards, and narrow pathways occupy steep cliffs above the Mediterranean Sea.
Namibia's Sossus Vlei reveals an extreme desert environment, where towering dunes, scarce water, and intense sunlight.
High above Switzerland's valleys, Gimmelwold remains surrounded by steep mountains, alpine meadows, and difficult terrain.
Remote Himalayan villages in Nepal adapt to steep mountains, narrow paths, and changing weather while maintaining agriculture and traditional community life. Ethiopia's Afar landscape is among Earth's harshest environments, marked by intense heat, salt flats, volcanic terrain, and extreme aridity. Rain sits between Norway's towering mountains and Arctic waters, where fishing communities adapt to rugged geography and demanding coastal weather. Across Earth's harshest landscapes, these remarkable communities prove human life can adapt, endure, and